Hi guys, how you doing? I just thought I'd do another video based on a couple of email questions. I thought it might be easier just to respond with a video because other people might have the same sort of questions. Um, one was, how would you go about taking or getting a higher protein diet without protein supplements? That's it's just a case of eating more protein rich foods, really. And I think they were asking for some examples. So I've sent out a wee list, a wee sort of cheat sheet of examples for breakfast, lunch, and dinner previously, highlighting what foods are like more rich in protein. But generally speaking, high protein foods are like meats, um, and dairy products. They're just sort of like main two: meats, fishes, and dairy products. So from within that, like I gave an example of a chicken breast has about 35 to 40 grams of protein in it. Fish is varying, loads of different types of fish. So the easiest thing I think you can do though is do a bit of research and almost look at the back of packaging, so that you become more aware of what you're consuming and its content. So just the nutritional information in the back will say like how much protein per 100 grams, how much carbohydrate per 100 grams, and so on. And that way you can make more educated and informed purchases of as to what and how to create a makeup of a diet. When I say a diet, I mean a way of life, as in a way of eating, as opposed to, I think the word diet is synonymous with dieting, going on a diet to lose weight, but really what it should be is diet, as in this is my diet. This is generally how I eat, like on a sort of it's like a pattern of foods that I consume regularly, daily, because that is ultimately what will dictate like your overall health and that kind of thing, is what your typical diet is, as opposed to just on a temporary basis going on a diet. So yeah, you want your leaner cuts of meat, obviously like chicken, you've got turkey, maybe some fish, like, as I said, there's all sorts. Like a can of tuna's probably got about 25, 30 grams of protein in it, that kind of thing. Um, Various different cheeses as well, ricotta cheese, cottage cheese. These are pretty high protein uh, examples. And the whole idea is, if you're not wanting to go near the supplement route, would be to try and like opt and learn how much you would need to eat of each in order to achieve a decent amount of protein in every day, from like 100 grams a day up. So, for example, I don't know, poached eggs in the morning would be about 3 eggs would be about 24, 25 grams. You might have a baked potato with for lunch with chicken, something like that, which might be 30 to 40 grams. Same for dinner. You might have, I don't know, a baked potato with cottage cheese, or baked beans with cottage cheese. I don't know if that goes, but that's an example. So you've got your complete proteins, and your complete proteins are your meats, your fishes, and your dairy. And generally speaking, those are the ones they're called complete proteins because they contain all the essential amino acids. Okay, whereby things you need to get in through your diet, um, and that your body can't sort of create itself. Whereas you can get other foods with protein in them that might not have all the essential amino acids. So that's where, like, so vegetarians or vegans, for example, they can still get full protein, high in protein diets. They just need to be a bit more creative, I guess, with their dishes in order to create sort of the complete amino acid profile or complete protein profile. So for example, like a combination of chicken, a combination of peas and rice is probably the most popular way, or mixed beans and stuff is the most popular sort of variety of foods on a daily basis that a vegetarian or vegan would eat in order to ensure that they're getting a decent amount of all the essential amino acids and they're getting a full protein, sort of coverage, if you want to call it that. So yeah, so these are the sort of things that to look at. It's just about educating yourself, like reading up on the different types of foods. It's not because it's not always as simple as like like protein is just protein. Like, it's to do with the amino acid profile, and then when you move on, if you look a bit deeper than that, it comes down to trying to ensure that decent amount of muscle protein synthesis on a sort of daily basis as well. And this comes back to the whole concept of accumulation, and why it can't just be a case of focusing eating more protein the day you train. Because, and it's the same with even things like beta alanine and the whole idea of like taking it every day, so that after 30 days your carnosine stores have accumulated. So muscle protein synthesis. Well, you've got protein synthesis, and then you've got muscle protein synthesis, and that's the kind of essentially that's kind of like the art of muscle building. And there's things we know that you can do to improve or increase muscle protein synthesis. So one is a higher protein diet will aid in that. Okay, but it has to be done daily. And the second thing is resistance training. So what we know is that resistance training elevates muscle protein synthesis, and that so it elevates the body's ability to promote, grow, and repair muscle, or repair and then grow new muscle. It's a very slow process though, and we know that when you do like a strength training or resistance training session, the muscle protein synthesis peaks around 24 hours, or usually, probably a peaks around 24 hours after the session. So, and it can also stay elevated for up to 72 hours, so 3 days off. So it can actually take about 3 days before it peaks back down to its pre-training level, and that's where the argument for like reasonably frequent training, resistance training, comes in. Like, so every 72 hours, for example. Now, there's a few precursors to that though. One being that resistance training, it has to be at a certain amount of a certain intensity, and that intensity that is measured is based around your body's 1 rep max, or close to your 1 rep max. And what I mean by that is the amount of like weight that your body or muscle can lift for a maximal effort for 1 rep. Now, you don't need to test your 1 rep max in order to find that out though, because you can kind of gauge it based on what you can achieve for 6 reps or 8 reps or 12 reps. So what I mean by that is the intensity that you need to train at in order to benefit from the effects of muscle protein synthesis, and in order to grow muscle in strength, the intensity has to be above about 40% of your 1 rep max. So for example, that's why cardiovascular exercise won't increase muscle mass, because the intensity is too low for that. Okay, it benefits your heart and lungs, but it doesn't increase muscle. That's why, generally speaking, like marathon runners are really slim builds, because their training isn't to gain muscle, it's to get fitter over a longer distance of running. So in order to the intensity has to be 40% and above, which equates to a weight that you can lift for anywhere between maybe 3 and maybe a maximum of 15 repetitions for sets of maybe 2 to 4 sets. So if you're lifting a weight that you can lift for maybe 30 reps, 40 reps, 50 reps, that is not an intense enough amount of weight or force production via the muscle to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, so i.e. to stimulate a potential muscle growth. So it would fall into the more conditioning and cardio side of things. And again, that's a legitimate type of training, but you're not going to gain muscle with doing that. It has to be above a certain intensity. So we know that the intensity has to be above 40%, which it is when you're training, or it should be, and it has to be consistently above 40% for maybe 3 or 4 sets. I'm saying 2, 3 or 4 sets because it kind of depends as well, like on the if you're going really slow and eccentric as well with that can have a slightly that's a variable that's kind of harder to totally measure. But rest assured, the intensity we're asking to work at the sessions are above the 40% that you need to stimulate some sort of muscle growth. But the challenge is though that it has to be done at an intensity frequently over a prolonged period of time. Like we're talking like 8 to 12 weeks. Like you can't gain muscle in a short space of time, because muscle protein synthesis is such a slow process, and it has to be like, so there's 3 days of something happening, then you need to repeat it, then you need to repeat it again, and then you just need to keep repeating it week in, week out, and very slowly but surely a response will happen. So one of the ways to increase that response or improve that response is also a higher protein intake. So that's why the two combined are essential. Other things that can improve it are sleep, how well you sleep, And I posted a wee article on alcohol on Friday night, not thinking about the timing of it, and I think it probably put a few folk off. Probably not alcohol, probably coming back to boot camp. And because alcohol consumption can have a negative effect on muscle protein synthesis. So that's something that's definitely worth considering. If you train, if you do a resistance training session, I mean, I would argue, therefore, that if you're going to get drunk, then you might be better doing a cardio session that day, maybe, or the day after, because the goal of the cardio session isn't about stimulating muscle protein synthesis anyway. Um, so whereas like when it comes to like training, like so if you know that the 24 hours after a weight session is where muscle protein synthesis is at its peak, you don't really want to do anything. You don't want to go out your way to interfere with that process if you want to maximize results and get the most out of that session you did. So drinking a lot of alcohol would be one of those things that would go out your way to interfere and undo the good of that session on a physiological level. It wouldn't do. I'm not saying it would undo all the good. It wouldn't, but it would reduce the effects of the muscle of that process, of that physiological process. And yeah, so that's something to bear in mind. I'm not saying a glass of wine's going to do anything, but I mean like proper. I don't know, a bottle of wine, that kind of thing. Like I drink to get drunk type uh, session that I'm sure we've all had over the years. So it's just these are the sort of things that are worth bearing in mind. Um, I'm kind of rambling a bit now, so I'm just going to stop there. I think. Yeah, I think I can't even remember if I mentioned the whole concept of like bloating in your stomach sometimes if you take protein supplements, but that's something to consider. And that's where vegetarian supplements might be something to look at, which there's plenty of. So yeah, if this raises more questions than answers, then please just give us a shout.